talk with you about some of the tools and tricks and technology that can be involved and helpful in first year seminar. I asked them to do this because they're two of the folks, and I know there's so many more in this room, but they're two of the folks that they're go-tos for me. And they've taught me a lot about fun little things that can be incorporated into class that are simple, but really make a major impact. So I'm going to turn the stage over to them for just a minute.
All right, well, I'm Lynn at Topaz. So one of the things that we do all use with FYS is the GroupMe app. And we do need to know a lot of things about that, but in addition to how to create your group, adding those members, and then to share those groups, we need to know how can you implement that within your classroom.
And so I pulled some examples. So I've taught FYS. I've had about 8 or 9 classes. And so I've pulled some direct examples from one of my FYS this past fall. And so I might zoom in just a little bit on this.
A lot.
It has the mouse. Yeah, there we go. All right, let's roll. Okay, so I'll start at the beginning. We did a poll. How was your first day? It was anonymous. We got lots of good feedback on it. Other ways I've used it, tutoring information. I've posted lots of things in there. Final schedules, the food truck, if anyone remembers the food truck, we posted lots of pictures about the food we got that day from the food truck. About half of the class went. We went to the career fair, so we dropped some pictures of what we did with the career fair. And my peer leader at the time, I had her come up with different things throughout the semester that she could share with them. So this one was how to make an email signature. So she went through with them and made step-by-step instructions so they can make their email signatures for their MSU email. One time she did citations over GroupMe, so she was really on it with the GroupMe. She wanted to interact a lot on there. Sadly, she's graduated, or otherwise she'd be here to help me with this one. Our favorite Halloween costume, so everyone shared their favorite childhood Halloween costume, which then became a theme for our class. Other things we've done, we did pet pictures over Thanksgiving. Fun fact, this was the first time I saw their actual faces, because at that point we were still masked. And at the very end, they chose to share all their social medias, so that way they could all stay in contact with each other afterwards. And so that kind of talks to you a little bit about how I used GroupMe in my class. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
With the GroupMe, guys, there are so many times when you need to reach out to students, and this just gives you that quick, they normally have their phones on them, and you are able to reach them quickly. With the GroupMe, one of the things I would like to do is to include my reading teachers in my GroupMe so that they get to see what the students are saying. So if you have an e-course, now I don't want to overload our reading teachers because they do have multiple courses, but if they are in agreement, I would really like to see them in those GroupMes so that they know what the students are saying and they're getting to know the students better and they know what's happening in the other courses. So they can say, hey, I saw that you did this, and they see that there's that wraparound effect. The instructions on here, once you get on GroupMe, are extremely direct. Guys, it's easy to do, easy to set up. And one of the things that Michelle would like to do is for you to have a GroupMe to go to with this group of people.
A few years back, Laura did a GroupMe for instructors, and it seemed to work really well, and we just kind of have tapered off away from that. And so for those of you who might be interested and want to participate or be in the know in that way, you can certainly use this QR code, and it'll take you to the link. Is that right, Lynn? So that it'd be for the instructors.
Open up your camera and then focus on the QR code, and it should add you to the GroupMe if you've already have it on your phone.
Here's the thing you need to know about this, and Sarah touched on this a moment ago. Just like with students when they use this as well, if they don't participate or make some type of contribution or a comment or something like that, then they are essentially kicked out of the GroupMe group. So make sure if you do this, that when you get the notification that you actually go in there and do a thumbs up or something like that, a smiley face, whatever you can think of in that regard. Because here's how we're going to use this. Quick tidbits of information or updates, reminders, or things that would be helpful for you as an FYS instructor to know. We're going to be pushing out information to that as we can. We do not want to inundate you because obviously our hope is that you're going to have another GroupMe class or group with your class. This is really just to keep you in the know as to what's going on. And my staff, we use it heavily. I think that's fair to say as far as GroupMe. And we'll push stuff out. Hey, what about this student? Or who knows about this? Or did anybody know this update? We use it continually. There's not many days that go by, even on the weekends, when we don't just, somebody posts something in the GroupMe. Sometimes it's for fun. Sometimes it's just, what's happened in the day. But we hope that you'll be interested and want to utilize the GroupMe, because that'll be an easy way and another venue for us to push out information to you. I will try to keep everybody in the know with emails as well on big ticket things that need to be pushed out to the FYS instructors, but this is just a quicker way if it's something that's a small soundbite.
And if you're having trouble getting into the group today, or you don't have your phone with you, or you have to download the app, just get with us afterwards and we can make sure you get added to this.
Is there anyone who has something specific they would like to share about when they have implemented and used GroupMe, where they have found it to be extremely helpful?
So we had GroupMe, I think this was probably first semester we were teaching this revamped section, and there was a flood on campus. So didn't expect that sort of thing. Lots of people were on GroupMe saying, okay, it looks like it's gonna flood my car. Where on campus can I move to so I'd be out of the low water? So stuff you don't expect will happen like that. So I was chatting with my students.
Awesome. And that's the kind of things we'd like to see.
Oh, yeah.
I have my peer leader usually run GroupMe, and he usually sends out campus activities that are going on, if there's social events. He also will remind them when homework assignments are due, when the due date is, and so that's really helpful. And I would just oversee the conversation and everything, but he usually just runs the whole thing.
My peer leader last year would send them out going, hey, I'm at the door of Ada getting ready to go to this. Anyone on their way that wants me to wait on them to walk in with them? It gives them that little extra security blanket, but, made them aware there's someone there waiting on me.
And again, just saying, I had my peer leader who was phenomenal, amazing, and I don't know how I would ever do it without her, because she's been my peer leader the last 3 years. Olivia Dale, if anyone knows who she is. Anyway, she would run all of the GroupMe, and then she would, but I was very clear that I was a member of it. I was like, this is not a place to vent about the class and how much you hate it. There are other venues for that. But this is, and I think that the peer leaders really have a pulse on what's going on. And there it's 24/7. And I'm like, I try to have some boundaries with work. And so if something is posted at 7 p.m., I'm not on my GroupMe checking me. I don't have notifications for GroupMe when I'm not there. So, but our kids are, peer leaders are never off.
Right. And with that, you can mute the GroupMe for either an hour or a day, things like that. So you can set the mute examples on there. Also, you can use it on the web. So if you didn't want the app on your phone, there is a website you can log into with your phone number or your email. And I like that if you have multiple FYS classes, which I have always had. You can put both the classes in one spot and copy and paste the same information into both of them. You can also drop pictures and things like that. So if you would rather use the website version, it is also very handy, and you said, it helps create that boundary for you. The next one we're going to talk about is Kahoot. We both love to use Kahoot in our classes. The students are really familiar with this. So just a couple of facts about it. So the free version has a maximum of 10 people. But the good thing about this is that it fosters having that community, having those pairs. And so most of us have about 19 kids in our class. That allows you to pair them up really easily. We'll be sending this out, so all the how-to instructions, you'll get those. We just wanted to put them in here. Here are some example Kahoots that we've done. And so we just kind of took some pictures of what it looks like to have a Kahoot. Sorry, I gotta scroll through this one. We already talked about that one. Okay, now I'm gonna zoom in. Okay, so with Kahoot, the entry page, once you've logged in, will let you search for Kahoots other people have made. This is really handy. A lot of my classes, when we had 10 or 15 minutes at the end and we just wanted to do something, we would search for trivia. So we would do Disney trivia, we've done Nickelodeon, things like that. And so if you wanted to just pull one up randomly, a quick one to do, that's always really fun. I've also made a bunch, and I'm willing to share these with anybody, but I've done, MSU history. How often do you wash? And so bedding, jeans, things like that. Expectations among cultures. That one is super popular with the students. I feel sometimes you don't have a really great cultural awareness. And so I do that one every semester. What's in the undergraduate catalog? All of these I do pretty much every semester, as well as some random ones I've done. Science facts, weird state laws. My last class was super obsessed with state laws and how they were implemented. Like ice cream cone in your back pocket is Kentucky. Who knew?
Illegal.
The game, you can either do, if you wanted to do teams versus classic. The classic is each person, their one phone. But if you do teams, you can have 5 different teams across the room, and it will randomly assign them, so you don't have to. It looks like this when they log in. So I did a practice one where they put the code in, and I had 3 teams made. When they answer, you kind of get percentages of how many people guess the right answer.
Quickness matters on Kahoot. You get more points for the quicker you buzz in.
Yes. And so these are just some of the examples of what it looks like. After every question, it gives you a score. So my teams would get super competitive, being the one who got it first, got that top score. And it just really helped that sense of community in my class. You can also do polling questions. So this is a free one. So this one wasn't worth any points. I just wanted to know, have you ever seen this? Have you ever been to this place? I use this across the board. Have you been to a sporting event at Morehead State? Are you involved in a student organization? And that's just a data point for me. The quiz might be something about weird state laws, but I'll throw in a poll question that I want to know about them. Let's see. And at the end, it does do a podium of who got first, second, and third. So if you did bring some sort of like candy or something, it does tell you who got
Some fruit smiles.
Yes, those fruit smiles. And so it does tell you that as well. I think that's all the Kahoot stuff. Did you want to add anything about Kahoot?
If you happen to have the paid version, you can use multiple ones, but guys, we're building that community with this FYS. So when you're thinking, oh, well, it only lets you use 10, that's perfect for us. We are partnering, we are, forcing that community. So that is one of the things on here, even though the free version is 10, we want that community building. Oh, no, let's go back. The next example we're going to talk about is Nearpod, and once again, guys, the instructions are on here on how to use Nearpod. We just want to give you, though, what Nearpod is and how you can implement it. You can go back and follow these instructions pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and we are willing to meet with any of you one-on-one. So Nearpod is a really great tool because you can import the week's PowerPoint, upload it directly there, it puts it in there for you, if you scroll down. But it allows you to input questions as well. So I know in the first few weeks of all of my classes, everyone's kind of scared to talk. They don't want to give their opinions just yet. Well, this allows them to do it from their phone or computer and send it to the group. And so if I had this question, it would pop across everyone's phone. It says, how are you feeling today? With 5 choices. And then every single person in that room would have to answer it.
Now, the really cool thing about Nearpod is when they log in, their screen is what's on your screen. So they're not going on through a PowerPoint presentation. Their PowerPoint presentation moves as you move. So they're not going on ahead of you. They're seeing on their screen what you're showing. Now, if they don't have a screen, that's perfect. They can still see it here. But this gives you that interaction with the presentation. And it's just dropping it in.
Yes, and so since we don't have technology, I've had this happen every year. Someone's phone's dead. One year someone left their phone on top of their car on the way to campus and it flew off the bag. We pair them up. And so it can be done that way. It pulls up to the very front like this. This is the big board. You're seeing as they put in their answers what it looks like. The great thing is you can also do open-ended responses. So I said, what is the favorite thing that you did this summer? And you'll see Sarah went on vacation, but Caleb said it was boring. So you can see exactly what they see. And everyone has to look at this. My favorite part of it, though, is the fact that you can make it anonymous. And so I click the anonymous button and see the student names are gone. They're the exact same answers. What's even better is because, if someone puts up here something concerning, you get a report afterwards of who said what, no matter if the name is showing or not up here. So it tells you that if Sarah said, my day's been terrible, no one's here to support me, I really need food this weekend. I know that was Sarah, though Sarah didn't have to say that up here. And so that's a really great thing, especially with those more sensitive weeks and touch bases.
So Topaz, you touched on a key point too here, is that we do still have students that don't have a device. They don't have a smartphone, they may not have a laptop, they may not have those types of things. But the way that she's being handling that in her classroom is it lets them pair up anyway. And so I'm sure you intentionally pair them with someone who does. And so that may be something, we're going to be giving you, actually I give credit to Tasha for this because she created it, I don't know, we decided what, 4 or 5 years ago, Tasha?
And I don't know if I really truly created it or someone helped me and I'm taking,
We're giving you the credit for it.
I'm gonna say I created
But
it.
she created kind of like an intake form, and so we talked in new instructor training earlier this week about how invaluable that tool is so that you can actually refer to it for various things throughout the semester. And so she's updated that, but that may be also somewhere, and I'll send you that template that Tasha's updated for us, and that may be another place where at the beginning of the semester, you may wanna ask them, because they may not be comfortable telling the whole class or the whole class knowing that clearly. But what you can do is ask them, do they have a device that sometimes, in class, you may have usage of that, and see what they tell you. What I did year before last is, I was fortunate last year because all of my students had smart devices or laptops. But the year prior, that wasn't the case. And so I had a laptop in the office that I would pack up to go with me, and I would just kind of give it to the student so that he could utilize it during class. I don't even think anybody really noticed, but he could participate in these types of things. I'm not the most technology savvy person. I mean, Topaz can tell you that. But she's taught me a lot about some of these tools because the students really respond in ways that you'd be surprised because they're used to this type of interaction. And it's quick sound bites with these types of, surveys and quick questions you're asking, those types of things. You don't have to do that in your classroom, and if you don't feel intimidated or feel like you have to by any means. These are just supports or resources that you can bring to the classroom that may make it easier for you. But if you're somebody who's a little bit uncomfortable with that, that's okay too. We're just encouraging for you to know about these types of tools that are mostly free.
And just a small plug here, I did use this when we had to flip to remote one semester during COVID. I flipped to remote and everyone can join from different locations with the same code. And so I use this a lot when I remote teach. At any point I can open up and see who's active and not. So you see Sarah had a red dot here because she went inactive. She clicked off of the browser. And so it tells me that she did. When you upload them and make your own, you just, hold on, let me scroll past and I'll go back. You just upload the file. So you just download the PowerPoint and upload it and it automatically puts it all in there for you. And you can insert your own activities. So these are all the activities you could use that they provide for you. So polling, open-ended, you can even do a quiz and it gives you the answers that everyone put at the end. Or you can import extra slides, videos, and other web content. So this is a really, really good tool if you know how to use it. I've taught lots of people how to use this, and so if you would like to learn, I'm willing to help you.
Topaz, how long on average does it take you to set up something like this?
5-10 minutes. It takes
After
about,
the first time through,
Yes.
it's quick.
it takes only about a minute for it to upload because of all the slides, and then I just insert my questions. So all of my extra activities. As long as I have them planned, it takes almost no time. And I have most of the weeks already set up for what I do. I'm willing to share those. So if you have questions about that tool, I do love that tool the most.
Which tool was that?
Nearpod.
That's still Nearpod.
Yes, still Nearpod. It's all big tool. And now I'm gonna let Lynn talk about this one.
Okay, Quizlet Live. Most of you are familiar with Quizlet because a lot of our kids use the flashcards on Quizlet. They'll go to Quizlet, they'll look for, the flashcards that already are made, and most times they can find ones that match what they're doing. Quizlet Live works through the same system, but what it allows you to do is to set up games using those. Now we're going to do a quick, you don't have to log on, but if you would like to, we're going to let you see a little bit of what Quizlet Live looks like. Now, when we log in, normally, they go to the flashcards. I'm going to go to Classic Live here. And I'm going to do random teams. Now, when we talk about doing random teams on here, and Sarah's talking about not liking to separate them into the groups, this will separate them into the spiders, the unicorns, the snakes, whatever. This does the separation for you. And all you have to determine is how you want it to do. Do you want it to give the definition and then find the term, or do you want it to give the term and then find the definition? It'll go either way. If you would like to, click on this and it will take you to the app, and you're gonna see people start showing up here.
And I've already made one, so I know Dr. Couch was talking about those terms that not all the college students know, those first generation students especially, the registrar and different things along those lines. I've already made one that is those terms. What is the registrar? Who is your advisor? Those sorts of things.
Can you make that bigger, Topaz?
I can.
Now, one of the things that I really like, while I'm getting everyone logged in, that I like about Quizlet is that we talk about it being community building. On Quizlet Live, all answers are not on your phone. Within your team, the answer will be there on someone's screen. So you have to be willing to work with those people on your team because you may not have the answer. It may be on Jana's computer. It may be on Steve's computer. You have to be willing to trust in your team, and you're building that community using this one. We have got quite a few guys. I'm going to go ahead and say create the game just so, even if you're, or do we need to wait a second? Oh, we've got it. That's good.
Okay.
Now, notice that it already has our teams for us. It is going to take a few minutes for them to move to their groups. We're not going to move to our groups. I've also played silent Quizlet because once you start with your groups and you've played, you're going to see that there's some group members who are taking over, who know all the answers, and so they're going, no, this is the answer on this person's screen, and they're just sitting back and waiting on that person. So after we've done it a little bit and I start to see that, I'll play silent Quizlet where when it assigns the groups, nobody's allowed to say anything. And so you have to rely on every other team member to know their information. So it's kind of where you're building knowledge, or are you building that community when you're playing this? We're not going to move. So you're going to see the question or the definition pop up on your screen. You're going to have possible answers. They may not be the answer to the question. You're going to have to rely on your team members to move you forward. So if your team member has the answer, they'll click it, and then the next question is going to pop up on your screen. Now, if we were doing this in class, I would have had everybody move to their groups so that you can see everyone's screen, and you're all talking about it, working together, building that community.
And you'll see some of you have already gotten some questions wrong. It kicks you all the way back to the beginning if you get one wrong. And so you'll see some of these will go up to 1, but then they fall back to 0.
Oh, dolphins, come on.
Yeah, dolphins are struggling right now.
Oh, ostriches just went back to 0. Someone clicked it. So you can see it's almost like the little squirt machines at the old carnivals, with the little thing going across our screen. So you can actually get them involved with each other. These are extremely easy to create, the cards, but like I said before, if you get on there, you will be amazed at how many sets there already are that are going to match what you need. And then you can copy those and adjust those. Oh, dolphins.
Also just had 3 and they fell back again.
Oh,
And so that's just kind of what it's like, just to kind of give you that.
And I will tell you, college kids can get vicious with this. They do very much so get into where they're at, and don't touch it till we've all agreed on it. You will hear that coming more than, do not push anything till we all agree. So, and that's nice to hear.
So they're all really competitive. That was just to give those of you who did participate, that's what it seems like.
And we're going to go ahead. I'm sorry, we're clicking off.
Okay. I left it open, so if you're still playing, feel free to finish it. But I did click to the death. That's fine.
Once we do provide this, guys, it will tell you how to play. This will have a link to how do you set it up, how do you go about that. But it is pretty straightforward. Now this is the big one.
And it's a bit of a change for those of you who are returning FYS instructors. In the last few years, we've used Goose Chase. Well, so we were sitting down and we were looking at options, and these two folks are technology gurus for sure. And so I told Lynn, I said, Lynn, I'd like to have an in-house Goose Chase tool. And she says, give me a minute. And so literally she comes back, I totally forgot about that conversation. She comes back within an hour and she says, Michelle, can you take a look at this? So we're now doing, instead of Goose Chase that you may be familiar with from the past if you're returning, Instructor, we're now gonna utilize the same type of activity, now calling it Eagle Chase. And so this is the opportunity where in the beginning of the semester, the assignment where we have students find various key locations across campus, that type of thing. It's now Eagle Chase, but it's internal. Here's the thing too, that tool in and of itself, it was like $2,500. And so this is something that's free, well, almost free, less than $50 that we can get to accommodate all of the different classes that we're gonna have. So Lynn's gonna walk you through this tool that she's created, and it basically functions very similarly than that Goose Chase that you're probably, the returning folks are familiar with already, but it's easy to use, and she's gonna show you how it works.
Well, and yes, we thought we would enlarge this, but
But it won't.
it is not enlarging where it is in the
But you'll have,
presentation.
you'll have it, we'll email it to you.
Okay.
Now, this is what it looks like, guys, when you open it up. I'm gonna go ahead and go to what, yeah, and there we definitely enlarged. There, we've got full. Okay, so, first thing they're going to do, I don't know about you, but with Goose Chase, some of my E-kids ended up in regular 05 sections. So one of the things that we've tried to do on this is that we have actually listed the course number and name. So there are a few of these. I'm going to go back and double check, and we can add those in as we get those filled out. But the kids can see who their professor's name is in addition to
The section.
the section. So if I pick Michelle Barber's, and then I'm going to put my team name and number in. Now notice that it's only required for one team member. That's not what we want. You know, we want them to have multiple team members, but if someone ends up doing this on their own, it will allow just one person to do that. Down here, on the
Lynn?
first question,
Lynn?
we are
I think we have a
giving,
question.
Could you zoom in, press Control plus until it zooms up?
on this one, we can zoom in. On the other one, even Control Plus was not doing it.
Good, good.
For the, on this, did you want zoomed
Yeah,
or the?
that's
Oh,
good.
okay.
Can you make it so it's all the way wide? Fills the space? It's real hard to read back here. Perfect.
All right. So they are given a little bit of information about financial aid, a little bit of background, and then in bold, underlined, it's going to tell them what they need to do for that question. You know, take a group picture in front of the financial aid office, just like what they were doing with Goose Chase, but now they're doing it on here.
And the
If you've
spots, locations, none of that's changed. So if you're familiar with last year's or year prior, whatnot, it's still the same locations that they'll be hitting.
On your phone, it may say, you may have to click it, and then it'll say, do you want to use a picture that's already there, or take a picture, and then they upload it to that. So each one of these, and actually we use this with Success Academy this summer as kind of a check to see, can we do this, will this work? And Sarah said it was a whole lot easier to implement than when she did the Goose Chase of downloading the app and.
If they're all on it at the same time, it's a little slow, but it never timed out or shut down or anything like that. Having done this multiple years, I need you to be very clear with your students that you will be looking at these pictures and they need to be appropriate. I'm not kidding. You will be looking at these pictures and they need to be appropriate.
How did the pictures come to us?
That's what Lynn will tell you.
What was it?
How
How
do
do the
they get their
pictures-
pictures?
How do they see them?
All right, once all of this comes back, go back. Your responses will actually come back to me in a spreadsheet that is now massive. And I will be sharing your class with you. This was one of the ones where we did some trials in my office, and each one of these files is an upload, so if I click, come on. Let me go down a little bit. Well, the picture's not showing here, it's going down below, so there we go. Oh, it's untelling, because this was one day we were trying, there's a picture from my office. So it uploads them to here, and I will be sharing your class's results with you, so you will see the course, the different team members, and then going across through here, there will be a file for each of the places they were supposed to take a picture. So you'll be able to click on each picture and see where they are. So you'll have access to the pictures. Pretty easy to access and score. Are there any other questions about and guys, if you happen to come across something that's not working right, we have tried running it through Success Academy, we've pulled, we're working to make sure, just let me know and we will try to get it fixed real quickly. I don't expect any, but.
One thing I noticed I logged in and tried to get you to log in from my Gmail, so I might change that. So, because they might not all have a Gmail.
We have looked at that setting and it is actually set, and I'm not sure why it's asking you to, because we have changed it to the.
It asked me.
Did it ask you to
There
change
is a
it?
response in forms where you have to go into a different section.
Here is my question, here's my thoughts on this, guys. Now that I'm thinking about this, I copied from the one we're gonna be using for an instructor one, and I bet I've not gone back on this one. I'm almost positive that's what it is, and it's on the other one that I've gone in and changed everything, because I did not want all the extra responses. So that may be, but I will go back. Sarah said though that there were some, even on the SSA ones, that we did make sure that it was unchecked, that there were some kids who needed to sign in. Which I'm also gonna say this, signing in with a Gmail is no harder than downloading the Goose Chase and all of that.
So for troubleshooting, let's make sure to clarify that. For troubleshooting purposes, if they get that message, they need to create, if they don't have one.
They can create or just use their Gmail account.
Okay.
Most of our students, guys, have Gmail.
Does it save their content, like my students have done it as part of it one time, so they can kind of save it and get back in? Or do they need to take all the photos and then go into this?
They can do it either way.
Okay,
They would just have to keep the browser open, they just can't close the form.
okay, yeah.
But it won't time out.
Will the QR code be posted in week 1 on Blackboard, or are you gonna email it separately?
Xavier?
I believe it's actually in week one. So there's not a QR code, there's just a link that they can,
They click
I
on the
suppose I
link.
could put in QR code.
That would be good. Could you keep the link to do both?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Any other questions about this one?
So the link is it class specific?
No.
So it just all goes into the spread and then you'll,
And then I'm going to filter out.
They just need to know, as Lynn was saying, hopefully they know your name, because I've gotten those two in the past that Laura's had to forward me and say, hey, I think these are in your class. If they know your section number, great, but hopefully they'll know your name at least.
Okay, so the next one, we just kind of listed some additional things that we do. We didn't want to go into too much detail about too many things and confuse everyone. But if you were interested in learning about any of these other softwares, we can walk you through them. So we've got Poll Everywhere, the Google Suite, Edpuzzle. We've got tons of PowerPoint activities, Family Feud games, Jeopardy, Catchphrase, Two Truths and a Lie, and then Lynn likes to play Heads Up and use quizzes as well. So we can teach you about using any of these tools. They're just additional things that if you were interested in, there are other ways to engage the class with the material.
Can you all give me some information or links or however it would be easier to do that so that we can put it in the instructor toolbox? Okay.
And then just our contact information is the last thing. So if you wanted to reach out to either one of us about setting up a time, maybe you can do one-on-one or a small group to do these things, just let us know.
Okay. Thank you all so much. And like I said, if you're somebody who you are all in for the technology, then this kind of resonated with you. And if not, that's okay too. These are just some additional resources we wanted to make sure everybody was aware of. So next we have with us Everybody that's returning is familiar with the library assignment. And so this year, the library assignment is going to be due September the 30th, I believe, Tom. I think that's what we decided.
Yeah.
Tom is going to walk you through, mostly, if you're familiar with the library assignment, it's unchanged. If you're not, then he's going to talk with you a little bit about that so you understand that a little bit more conceptually and why we do it and how it works. If you've got one of the copies, the hard copies of the syllabus, you'll see that it's due September the 30th, as I said. This is one area where I can tell you, and Laura could probably speak to this better than I do, and you've probably done the same in your class. You can beg the students, sign up for this, you've got to do this, here's your deadline, here's your deadline, here's your deadline. You will have those students that'll do it right away, and then you certainly have those students that literally September the 30th comes, and they email you the next day, because it's urgent to them now, oh my gosh, what can I do? I didn't get to do my library assignment. Tom's going to talk about that too, because he has an alternative, another option for the students, I guess we could call it that. But it's kind of like a drop dead date, they have to have it done by then, so.
And there's a reminder in every week.
Every week.
So if you actually go through your weekly content in class, that will remind you to remind them.
That's right. Tom is also on our, Laurie talked about the FYS subcommittee. Most of the members on that subcommittee are faculty senate appointed. I think it's really ran through the Gen Ed Council. Isn't that right, Laura? How that works? Tom is also on that committee, and so he's been one of the steering leaders who's helped to compile and coordinate and essentially oversee the curriculum for FYS too. So major contributor.
So, can someone tell me how to get to my flash drive? Looking for usually it's down.
Bottom, when you go bottom left. Bottom left, okay.
Press Windows and hold Windows and press E. That'll open up the Explorer.
I'm gonna open up a few files here.
It's a little slow.
All right. If you've done this before, you might be familiar with all this. There's not a whole lot that's new. Before COVID, we had the library goose chase, but that's been phased out. All of the points are associated with the in-person instruction. There are a set of WebEx sessions for the online sections. I've already sent out an email this morning to the 3 instructors there. What we don't want to have happen is for any of your students to, in the in-person sessions, to register for the WebEx sessions. Part of the experience is for them to show up and be there in person. For the same reason, we're not going to say yes if you're asking for recordings of the session to send your students. That's not an acceptable way to fulfill the requirement. One way that we will stretch to, at the end of the month, there's always a number of people who have excuses of varying degrees of validity. To accommodate those, we would probably do the first week in October some last chance sessions. So we would add to the calendar rather than send recordings or let them do WebEx. So let's see. This is all set up. We're got to jump on it, and all the registration things are in place. So day one, week one, they could register, but sometime during the first 2 weeks. And we really appreciate it if you take some class time to walk them through the registration. Sometime in week one or week two, the sessions start in week 3, and they go through from week 3 through week 7. This is the page that explains what the requirement is. They only have to attend one session, but they have 3 choices. So this is where the class time is best spent in discussing what they might be interested in doing. Like it says here, let's see, choose one but not all 3. This is an important point. Attendance is, the official attendance record for the in-person sessions is a paper sheet that we hand them out and at the beginning we say you have to sign in to get credit, and at the end we remind them you have to sign the sheet to get credit. So that's the attendance record. Something will come up here in a minute. And so you're helping them through this, reading, maybe they're reading the summaries in class, but then try to take some time to have them click in and choose the option that most interests them and get it on their calendars. And the registration is real simple. You pick the session that you're interested in. You hit begin registration. It's the EagleCount login. And the nice thing about this is that by doing it this way, we ensure that they're not going to have typos for their name or their email address. It's going to be put in for them from the system. So now the only thing they have to do to register is to figure out which section they're in. So hopefully they can get that from the syllabus. And so they pick that, they register, and that's the registration process. It's as simple as that. They will get an email instantaneously with basically telling them the information about the session. They'll get a reminder email the day before the session. They'll get a third email 24 hours after the session with a survey to ask them what they thought of the session. So 3 emails. Now, one thing that has happened, and I'm not going to imply that any of the students are dishonest because that's too unpleasant to think about. Let's just say they have a false memory of attending a session because they didn't actually attend it. And they might send you the email that we sent them as proof that they attended the session. That's not proof that they attended the session. That's just proof that they registered for the session. So one thing we've added this year is in those emails, we actually say in the email, this is not proof that you attended the session. So you don't have to check with us. You can just say, look down here, it says this doesn't mean you attended. And so with attendance, let me show you what we will eventually send you in the end. We'll send you an Excel file, and I'll sort it on this column right here. So you see all the section 1 people are together. You've got your student name, and in this column, the yes means that they signed that sheet. We took the sheet and put a check mark next to their name in the system, saved it, and that means they've attended. If there's a little dash, that means they registered for the session, but they didn't attend. And if they're not listed at all, they didn't register at all. Now, one weird thing that happens is that once in a while, you'll get a student who shows up for the session, attends it, signs the sheet, but they hadn't registered for that one, which is kind of odd. But when that happens, we catch it, and I will send you an email directly telling you that your student deserves the credit for it, even though they're not going to be in the report that we ultimately send you. So that is how the attendance report will look after the month of September is all open. We've got them all tallied. If you need an intermediate report, like midway through the month, so that you can encourage stragglers, just let me know. I'm happy to do things on the fly as we're going through the month. That's how the attendance report looks. And I'm just super proud of this. I like to show this off because when we send that third email, we ask them to rate the session on a scale of 1 to 10, and we get a home run with a lot of the students, so we're very proud of that. Any questions? All right. Thank you.
One thing too, Tom touched on, it seems like every semester in my classes, I get these questions. I don't know if Laura did it, from the broader perspective. But students still get confused thinking they have to go to all of those sessions whenever they see that registration page. Just remind them, it's only one that they have to attend. And so I've literally had students, and I've told them repeatedly, and yet I still end up with a couple that end up doing more. Not to say that the information's not needed, but just remind them they only have to do one. Because sometimes I think that that's why they think it's a little labor intensive, and they put it off, is they think they've got to do all those.
Unless you got someone who's fanatical about the library.
Like yourself?
Just let them.
Any questions for Tom?
Tom, what's your last name? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Kmetz.
What?
Kmetz.
How do I spell that?
K-M-E-T-Z.
Thank you.
Tom, off the cuff, can you speak to resources that might be available to an FYS instructor that could be helpful to them, that they could, I know it's all out there, it's all, they can find this on the web, but what are some key resources that you think could be beneficial that the library provides for an FYS instructor?
Down on our ground floor in the library commons, there are 2 desks, a research help desk, which we used to staff that every hour the library was open, but we just can't, we don't have the people to do that anymore. But during the day, that's staffed. Every hour that the library open, we do staff the chat. So any kind of research question that a student would have or faculty would have will be responsive pretty rapidly. Also down in that big room on the first floor is the Learning Technology Lab. And Joe Schubert, many of you may know, he is a fantastic person to get to know. He created our makerspace. So if any of your students express an interest in that and are not aware of the fact the library does have a makerspace, I think Joe is looking for student workers right now. So if they're interested in getting experience with that, he's one to talk to. He assists with creating posters for presentations and video editing. So any kind of software that's a little bit out of the ordinary, any kind of work like that with technology, he's a fantastic resource. And then aside from technology, we have our traditional print collections, which we're happy to do tours up for any time. And also, we will, upon anyone's request, do instruction sessions tailored to anyone's needs. So if you have a particular database you wanted us to focus on, we can do that. Just whatever the faculty member or the student wants, we can comment. And finally, off the top of my head, we also have the ability on our website to take appointments. So they can go in and avail themselves of a half an hour sitting down with someone in the library to help them with their research. And we're happy to do that. And it's easy to do it through the website.
Okay, thank you.
I'm also located in that same room in the library commons, so if you have any technical issues and you want some face-to-face help, that's where I'm at. But I would suggest contacting me ahead of time because we don't have a lot of people to respond, and I want to make sure I'm available when you arrive.
I just noticed my colleague Lucinda Ward back there. She is going to handle the WebEx versions of all the instruction sessions. So she's one to talk to for things related to extended campus.
Thank you, much
Thank you.
appreciated. And if you have questions, as Tom said, He's great to respond to email quickly, shoot him an email, call him, drop by the library, that type of thing. Thank you. We're gonna transition just a little bit. What Sarah and I are gonna talk about in this quick session is, you're gonna hear from a peer leader in just a few minutes, so I'll give you a teaser of that. We're gonna talk about going the extra mile. You know, and as you listen to Dr. Couch as she was talking, you know, it's a weighty responsibility to be a first-year seminar instructor. I mean, it truly is. And there's a lot of knowledge that has to come along with that too. And so with that comes the hope that you will go the extra mile in helping your students. And so she talked about some of those types of ways in which you can do that. And being clued in to their lives as much as they feel comfortable sharing, or as much as you feel comfortable knowing, it goes both ways with that, is key to doing that. I would encourage too that you be open to letting them know you as human, as you know, as a human being. There is this, even if it's not even, well, it is real, but there's a very perceived power imbalance for any student when they walk into your classroom. And for first year seminar, this is an area not at all that you should not be protective of your boundaries, which in fact I recommend that very, very much, that you know what your boundaries are and how you administer those in your classroom for various purposes. But they need to know that you're human too. And I think that helps for them to open up and to trust you, and so that they can allow you, because they have to allow you to help them. And so I think that that's a key too that we want to try to remember.
I was gonna say, on the first day of class, I put up a slide, and I put a bunch of pictures on it, and I tell them about each of the pictures. So I put my family picture up there, put the state of Missouri where I'm from, put a picture of my cat on there, I put a picture of the fish I caught this summer, that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna tell them all this stuff so that I'm not asking them anything that I'm not willing to tell them about myself. And so that really opens it up and is helpful.
And they identify with that. And I know many of you sitting in this room, and most everyone's academics, even if this is your first time teaching first year seminar, they will identify with that. And that will help them to relate to you a little bit more. But the beauty of the connection in the classroom is that you also have that helper. You've got that peer leader who's going to be the person that they probably do relate to in ways that they may or may not relate to us. Because they are, by virtue of their peer, more relatable. They know what they're going through. And so they are easier sometimes, you know, sometimes this isn't always the case, but sometimes with that, they can form that trust a whole lot easier with the peer leader than obviously the instructor in some ways. But in terms of going the extra mile and trying to help that student, literally what I have found in my experience, and you probably have seen this too, is letting them know that you truly do care. And it goes more than just saying that. There's things that you can do to let them know. I let them know, for me, that I have a job here at the university that's solely based on their success. And I let them know how seriously I take that. And that if there's issues that they're encountering, they can come to me with those types of issues. And so whatever your role here is at the university, let them know that. You know, let them know that this FYS thing is not your main gig. But let them know that there's people in these offices that they can connect with, because they will see other people in different offices in you. And they may be just a little bit more comfortable going to offices where they may have not been comfortable before, if they're able to talk with you and see you as a human being too. So keep that in mind as well. Sarah, what other ideas do you have about connection?
So that slide I do for myself, I was making my peer leader do that as well. So that they're also sharing things about it, to kind of form those connections within the class. And then again, the icebreakers and the get to know you games, it's the what can we connect on outside of being at Morehead State. And so just making those connections to make sure that they really know that you're there, and then following through on what you say you're gonna do. So when I say, if you don't come to class, I'm gonna be worried about you, and you send that group me message, and you say, hey, I'm worried about you, you've really followed through for them. On a side note, make sure you discuss the difference between a direct message and a group message with your group. I had a student who was not feeling well, and maybe told the whole class he had explosive diarrhea because he sent a group message instead of a direct message. So I'd have that conversation up front with your class when you're doing that.
I have an example of that too, which I find quite funny. I had an athlete a few years back, and so he meant, I suspect, he may have sent it to the whole class wanting to, but it was raining, and he says, "Can you just send me the link? It's raining." And he sent it to the entire class. And I literally saw them looking at their phones, and I thought, oh golly. And so I heard my phone, and I glanced at it, and I saw it, and I thought, I have to be an example. And so I thought, if he sent it to the whole class, I'm going to respond back to the whole class. And I said, "You won't melt. Get to class." And literally 10 minutes later, he walks through. It was a chuckle. He kind of chuckled. I said, "You didn't melt?" He said, "No, ma'am." So he walked straight in. And it was funny for me, but I could tell, and that was early in the semester as well, that the rest of the class thought, okay, she can be funny too, and they enjoy that. The students enjoy, even if we can laugh at ourselves. Because in our professional realms, we are capable, we're confident and competent in our roles. And that's how we should be. That's great. But they also need to see us as human beings who are able to laugh at ourselves when we make mistakes. I make them often. And, I think I'm so funny. My son thinks not. He's 23. And so he's like, "I cannot believe that you would have said that in class," when I tell him some things. And I'll say, "They laughed." They think I'm funny. But a lot of times I laugh at myself too. So I encourage you, be okay with that if you're not already. You all know what works in your class. You know the approaches that you have utilized. If you are new to this, you'll gain those. But if you have done this once or many times in the past, you know the approaches that are going to work for you and work well for you. And you may know the ones that won't. But regardless, it's that effort. And they know if you're really putting effort into the class or not. They pick up on that. They pick up on the fact too, if you enjoy being in front of them in the classroom, they are going to respond more positively to you than if you don't. FYS is one of those classes. It's different. It's a different beast. It truly is. And I've had students in the past, or feedback that I've seen too, that says, this is my hardest class, because we have quite a bit of assignments, but we keep them busy and we stretch them out throughout the remainder of the whole entirety of the semester. But I have most of the students that say, "Oh my gosh, this is the class I won't miss." And that's for me that I know I've made a win, because if they enjoy it, they're going to make sure that they're there. And that's the key with FYS. And so one thing I want to touch on too is, if you picked up one of the hard copies of the syllabus, you will see one of the questions that I've been getting is the attendance policy. And so I really couldn't answer that question until Academic Affairs leadership voted on kind of like a standard attendance policy. And what you'll see, Dr. Miller, you may be able to explain this better than I. What the university is trying to do is encouraging faculty, and correct me if I'm wrong, but encouraging faculty under the attendance piece, I guess I should have looked, yeah. Encouraging faculty to still be accommodating, is that appropriate to say? But there's no longer, we're trying to get more towards where, honestly, it got to a point where anything would go. And we were expected to allow and accommodate. And I don't think that's the case anymore. You'll see the statement that's in italics that I put on the syllabus, where students with symptoms of COVID or a positive COVID test, or those who've been directly exposed to others with COVID, should use the Healthy at MSU website for guidance about class absence. What I have been told is really there's no stringent guidelines that are being enforced for COVID attendance related protocol. Now, the Healthy at MSU website is being updated as the guidance from the CDC guidelines comes down and shifts and that type of thing. But the recommendations are essentially, what we've seen the last 2 years. If a student tested positive for COVID, they were out for nearly a couple of weeks. If not a couple of weeks, had to have the official notice. The instructor was clued in on all of that. That is not happening now. So don't be looking for those cues. Those are not going to occur. What will occur is if a student finds that they're positive, they can go to Healthy at MSU and it'll give them guidelines about it's recommended that you may want to quarantine for 5 days. When you do return to class, you may want to mask, and there may be further guidance involved in that too. Dr. Miller, I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there anything additional that I should add to that about
Well,
attendance?
yeah, the main thing is that we're not tracking it anymore like we did in the years past. You know, so you're not tracking it, you're not gonna get notified anything else. But they do have to show documentation if they miss class. They just can't say, like before, in years past, they could just say, oh, I had to quarantine, because that's not the requirement anymore. You're not required to quarantine and all that. So they will have to provide documentation. Now, just yesterday, we noticed on the website where everybody goes to the link and that, it wasn't clear what was for faculty and staff and what was for students. So I brought that to their attention yesterday in our nursing department and that. And so that will be updated, so it will be clear. Here's what students need to do.
Okay. Jana, you have a question?
Yeah, how can they provide documentation if they've been directly exposed? So that doesn't mean they've been tested positive or anything like that?
Well, if they're directly exposed, there are guidelines on what they should do if they're directly exposed.
Right.
And they don't, even being exposed, they don't necessarily have to miss class.
Right.
That's not like it was in the past. So that is a change.
It's recommended that they mask and certainly
Yes.
quarantine if they exhibit symptoms. I think it's part of it, but there's no requirement that they don't come. And so that's where what I'm telling you, that you need to make a decision as to your comfort level. I would recommend that you be consistent with that, but the reality is, it's gonna be up to you. I personally, and I think Dr. Couch said this to the new instructors earlier this week, I personally, if a student says, you know, I've tested positive, or, you know, I'm sick with symptoms that may mirror something COVID related, I'm gonna tell them, you're fine not to come to class. I will work with you to get you caught up. The problem with that is, because I don't want them exposing myself or other people, but the problem with that is, that may not be consistent across the board with their other classes. You know, before we had a standard that we were supposed to adhere to, and there was checks and balances and documentation and all that, that piece is now gone. So really, you need to decide from the outshoot, and that's why I wanted to cover this today, so that you can be thinking about this, how you want to handle these scenarios.
I'll tell you, with working from Success Academy, they're just gonna send you a picture of their positive test. And sometimes they'll send you a picture of 6 positive tests, and you say, oh my goodness, are those all yours? And they'll say, yeah, I just kept taking it, I thought it was wrong. So, but it depends on what your level of comfort is. I don't want students in my class who are sick. That's kind of, and I'll work with them as long as it's reasonable. But if they get exposed every week, or they're sick every week and they're not going to the doctor, I'm gonna call them out on it.
But I can tell you that as far as the official attendance policy for FYS, it was not approved that we would implement back where if you missed so many absences, you would be dropped a letter grade. It was discouraged that we do that. And so when you look at the attendance policy, you will see that it's absent from that. Yes, Jen?
So my concern is I've had students in the past who never come to class, but they log in and do all of the assignments and do them satisfactorily. I'm not comfortable giving them full credit, and like I'll email them and say, you've missed the last 5 classes. They won't respond to that message, but they'll go in and complete the coursework. And so in those instances, I'm just really uncomfortable giving them full credit, like at the end of the term. Okay, you haven't been here in like 12 weeks, but let me give you an A for this class. And so I feel like this attendance policy is just way too gray for me personally. Like, I'm just not, because the students who come every single time, we all have that one kid who shows up to every single class. That devalues their experience, because this kid sat in Cartmel Hall and did the same work and got an A but never showed up. And so I feel like this really doesn't cover those instances.
Not that I can help with that concern, but I can address it a bit with this comment is, the content for FYS is not overly difficult, I guess I should say. But the questions are truly plugged in on the quizzes and that type of thing, that will, if they came to class, they're probably, and they paid attention, they're probably gonna get, but if they didn't, they may not necessarily. Now, can they guess and get it right? Absolutely. But that was the intention with that. But you're right, and it can happen, and it does every semester.
Yeah.
But by and large, the content, because it's broken up each week, there's participation points that are built in, some participation points that are built in, that type of thing. But attendance is not weighted at all in this class. So,
Can the participation points be deducted based on the fact that the student was not in the room, even though they did turn in the work on time?
I think, I'm gonna go on a limb and say yes, I think you get to decide that, truly. But I would be consistent with that.
So part of it is that if you're not releasing your PowerPoints, there's no way they can get 100% on all
That's
their
right.
assignments.
No, but they can certainly pass the course.
They
They
still
can pass.
They
And
can
so,
still
like,
pass.
I had a student, recently, last fall, who, I mean, after a certain point, she just never came.
Right.
And we had those instances, like in the reflections, where I would say, if you had come to class, you would know this information. You know, they do the reflection, it has nothing to do with what was covered. However, she was still able to pass the class.
Right.
With probably like a B minus, because so much of it is not difficult. You know, so she was able to balance it out enough. But legitimately, I probably went 10 weeks and didn't see her.
Right.
And so, and this doesn't cover that, and so I just think that's a shame, because she should not have been able to do that, you know? So, that's just my 2 cents.
I think it's a valid concern, and I certainly understand and agree with that.
I believe that the attendance policy will be reevaluated every term.
Agreed.
And I don't think that this is what it's gonna end up being next year, the year after, that kind of stuff. So it continues to be discussed and on the table because of students in that situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything more you'd like to add to that? So, I know this is not necessarily, the best approach, but, it's where we've landed this fall with it. And so, I got this information earlier this week, and I started inserting it, and I thought, oh my gosh, we've got to talk about this at training, because, everybody needs to digest it, I think, and figure out how you're going to apply it in your classroom. And again, I use the word consistent. I would recommend that you be consistent with it throughout, however you decide to do that. Sarah, before I start talking about the pre-semester, why don't you go ahead and talk about the peer leader stuff since they're here, because we're running a little bit behind.
Okay, so each of the classes will be assigned a peer leader. We've got some last minute tweaks that we're working on. I hope to get you a list of who your peer leader is by tomorrow, so you'll be able to have their contact information. The peer leaders are coming to training on Monday for the most part. I have some who need to do some alternative training because they're RAs, they're participating in other groups. So we hope to get all the peer leader contact information to you by tomorrow or Monday at the latest, so that you can start making contact with them. What we're going to talk about today is how you can effectively use your peer leaders in your class. We've heard some feedback in the past that peer leaders are used to run the PowerPoint. And so you are greatly underusing your peer leader if that's all you're having them do. They're here to assist you. I know nothing about meal plans. They can answer all the questions about meal plans. So let them share their knowledge with your students to help them transition to the university.
And we want them to be a partner with you. You are absolutely in charge of your class. This is your class. But your peer leader is a support, a layer of support that's invaluable. And so we encourage strongly, just as Sarah was saying, that you heavily utilize them for the skill that they can bring to the table. Now, there's some new peer leaders, and so like Sarah said, we're training them next week. But there's some returning peer leaders who are absolutely just top notch. The one tidbit that I encourage you to do with a peer leader is meet frequently with them. What I do is it helps me, I kill 2 birds with 1 stone, because I meet with my peer leader, and I go over next week's content. I have a time that works best for them. It's a ongoing meeting. It's already established. We work on that together. We talk about the content that we'll be discussing and introducing the following week. So that helps me prepare, and it also helps me know where it's appropriate and where my peer leader's comfort level is of inserting them into the class and the lessons that they'll be overseeing. So we have some peer leaders with us today who function in various capacities. And so Laura had recruited and hired a lot of the peer leaders, so she can maybe speak to some of them that you saw that will be assigned to you. If you had a peer leader and you made a request to have that student returned to you and assigned to you, then Laura tried to accommodate as best she could. So we're hopeful that that's taken place. But there are some slots for new peer leaders. And so I'd ask some of the students that also work as peer coaches or tutors in our office who've also served as peer leaders to come and kind of talk about their experience so that you hear from them what their perspective is in terms of their role and why they think it's invaluable as well. So I would like to introduce you. Well, if you go ahead and introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit. Yeah. I'll move out of the way. Introduce yourselves, tell your major, where you're from, and how long you've been a peer leader or peer coach or worked in a peer leading capacity of some sort.
So my name is Maggie Dennis. I'm a senior business management major. I am a peer coach for Michelle, and I have been a peer leader for 1 year, so this will be my second year.
Okay, I'm Matthew Grace. I'm a junior, a history and political science major. I've been a peer leader and peer coach for the past year as well. Yeah.
My name is Destiny Brown. I am a senior education major. I have also been a peer leader for a year, and I'm going to be a peer leader of Miss Lynn this year.
So we'll just get into it.
Go right on.
Okay.
Jump right in.
So they just asked us to talk about kind of like what we think we do and kind of what we can do in the classroom like we did last time. And so for us, the biggest thing was like relatability. So they kind of feel a little more comfortable talking to us than they may you sometimes, especially when it comes to like, I don't know, stuff that we deal with every single day. Like I have people asking about, like she said earlier, meal plans and like dealing with their roommates. What about you?
Personal issues, family issues, just really, they'll be open with just about anything that they'll tell us, but maybe not tell you. And so it's kind of helpful to have that person in the classroom that you know the status of each of your students that perhaps they won't be comfortable telling you.
A lot of students have communicated to me if they have issues talking to like their professors or other people in professional settings. Sometimes they don't feel as comfortable telling you that because they also view you in that position. So I think they just kind of think that we can help them navigate those professional relationships.
And like going along with that, like they'll tell us that stuff and that gives you all more of an insight as to what is going on with them because we can relay that to you and like, how do I explain this? We can use that to make it more fun for them and cater their lessons to the classroom. I'm trying to think of an example of that. I don't know if that'd be.
So if they're telling us that they don't know how to do laundry, if they're telling them they're struggling with laundry, maybe we can just casually bring it up in class and tell everybody how to do laundry without anyone being felt called out about it.
Yeah. Especially when it comes to like, I've learned like making stuff fun. It's a little easier for like the peer leaders to tell you all how to do that just because like we've been in like the awkward icebreaker so we can tell you whether or not that's really going to work for our age group too. So going on with that, we're like a link between the student instructor so we can take these insights and, oh, I'm repeating myself, I'm sorry. Oh, I mean like, what I'm trying to say, is we can figure out what we need to cover more. So like, if it comes with being in, like figuring out what they, I'm so sorry, I'm lost.
Well, what you're trying to say there, Maddie, is that if we cover some content that we think that the students grasp it perfectly, just by having some conversations and maybe some cues that you pick up on because you get to know the student on a different level than we do, you may be able to say, you know, Michelle, maybe we need to talk about this a little more, and I think that so-and-so really didn't get this, and maybe we could provide a different perspective for the student. So I think that's what you're trying to say there, is that right?
Yes. We're also a resource to you. Like we all did this job because we want to be able to do stuff more than like PowerPoints. So like I liked making Kahoots for my class because they liked it and it was a little more personal and it helped them do better on their quizzes because they kind of got to see what was going to be on it. And like we know you all are busy and we don't want you all to be doing too much when we can be helping you out. Yeah, anything you did?
Well, it kind of helps to have our input in the class of how when we went through FYS, maybe our experiences with that to tell that to the class or just our experiences in college in general as when we were freshmen as they are now. Just to have that kind of student mindset coming in that's not from faculty and staff.
they're also a lot more likely to look at us and not you and be like, hey, we hate cahoots. So if you come across a class that hates cahoots, they're more likely to tell us than they would be you. So that's kind of helpful.
And so the hope is that the peer leader will be able to meet at least 2 times during the fall and of course the spring, if you teach in the spring, during the course of the semester, at least 2 meetings. And so in those meetings, we'll give them some guiding principles that we would like for them to cover, just to kind of check in with the student, to see how they're doing. And these check-ins, they don't have to be lengthy. It can be a 10 to 15-minute appointment, but it's really a time where they're connecting one-on-one with that student, each student in your class. So 2 of those this semester are going to be, that's the recommendation that we're hoping to be able to meet.
I think the last thing we kind of thought was important with our role is just being like a friendly face on campus. A lot of times, like a lot of students will come from either out of state or just like a smaller county and not nobody here, and literally just seeing somebody at ADUC and being able to say hi and like eat for a second makes them feel so much more comfortable. Like I've had people who come through recruitment and they'll be like, I want to talk to her because I know her. So have y'all seen?
Yeah, see them in passing.
With like Destiny, there were times on the group me, Destiny would say, hey, I am outside of ADUC getting ready to go into Eagle Fest. I'm waiting here for the next 5 minutes if you want to walk in with me.
I think also just sharing our enthusiasm about things, so like really pushing things like Eagle Fest as students makes them more likely to want to attend.
Any questions or comments that you'd like to share about the peer leader perspective?
Matthew is my peer leader, and so I just shamelessly make fun of him in class all the time. But like, if I ask a question to the group and it's crickets, I'm like, what do you think, Matthew?
Right, so then I'll give my input and maybe that will spark another student to speak, maybe not.
Yeah, and then there's some questions I've programmed him on, like he'll automatically give the response. Like, if you're cheating in class, what's your #1 assumption?
Your professor's an idiot.
See? So it can be, entertainment, that kind of stuff, but we're on the same page because we meet every week. And then we talk about what we're going to do the next time. And then we talk about what games he wants to play with them, because the games I picked, he told me were dorky. So he says, no, we're going to do this instead. So.
In other words, just use them. This is a paid service, and quite honestly, our Earn to Learn students across campus, this is the whole point of that. We want them to have some experience that they can use transferably into other aspects of their educational career, but also their professional careers. And they're eager. I mean, Laura can tell you too, if they apply for this role, they want to do the job. They want to be used. They don't want to just do, as Sarah was saying, key at the PowerPoints, although that's a very valuable role, I do think for sure. But they want to be utilized and they want to be relevant in class. And they know because they recruited, and when Laura was training them or hiring them, and obviously training in the past too, she tells them, you are going to be the person in class that the instructor is going to rely on, and the students are going to rely on you too. So they've got the dual purpose there. So, any questions or comments about that? Almost finished. Rosita. Oh, Rosita?
They get access to Blackboard. They can see what we see. But I am curious about asking what has been covered in their peer leader training.
What hasn't happened yet is happening on Monday.
Oh,
and so they will be cued to go ahead and look at the lessons every week before they meet with you, so that you're kind of on the same page. But as you're meeting with your peer leader, you can also establish that expectation for them that, hey, when we meet, I want you to have already looked at the PowerPoint slides before we start talking. That's because they get paid for preparation time. So that is something that you can establish as an expectation. Matthew and I usually just go through it together when we meet, and that's kind of what we do. And so that's what's been working for us for a while.
The last comment I have about this too is hold your peer leader accountable, because we have had situations in the past, and if you are a veteran where you've not had maybe the best scenario with your peer leader, try to have an open mind, because this may be the year. But hold them accountable. And so, like I said, try to meet with them weekly so that you're talking with them And that way, if they're not meeting what your expectations are, which I would prefer that you tell them what those expectations are up front. But if they're not meeting those expectations, review those with them and give them opportunities that you can share your feedback with them so that they can digest that and figure out ways that they can improve as well. And also be open to that if they provide that for you too. Because they can absolutely clue you in on some ways. Well, just like Sarah was saying, if something's just not working right, build that trust with your peer leader so that they can feel comfortable telling you, obviously in a respectful way, but that they can tell you what's going on with that. Craig?
I only have one question for Maddie. It's got 17 No, I'm done.
This is Craig's daughter, in case you didn't know. I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to tell people that, so don't tell them.
That's Amanda's daughter.
Yes, Amanda Dennis's daughter, not Craig Dennis's daughter.
You could have told them that she was his granddaughter.
Oh, granddaughter, yes. He's been here since the 40s or 50s, so that's what he said earlier. Well, thank you all so much. We appreciate it. The last two things are probably two of the most important things of the whole day. Not that the whole day, hopefully, was important for you. Pre-semester contact. So we have gotten to a point in the summer, and I'm going to tell you, there was a lot of jockeying and a lot of changing of seats. But we are to a point where most of the sections, as to what Sarah and I know it to be, and the advisors in the room know it to be, that they're clean. So what I'm saying is, it would be fantastic if you would reach out to your students, if you're able to access your roster. I point to Andrew. So that you can literally just something light and quick introduce yourselves. I will be sending you, I mentioned that intake form that Tasha updated for us. I'll be sending that to you. That might be a good time for you to send it to them, or if you want to make it a fillable form, whatnot. Do what you want to do with that. But maybe drop them a quick email to ask them how their summer's been, introduce yourself, and get them ready and get them excited to see you literally in 9 or 10 days, because we're to that point in the semester. The last thing, and try to do that soon, relatively soon, because they'll be arriving Sunday and Monday even. The last thing, everybody's probably thinking, when are we going to get access to the Blackboard shelf? I can tell you that Xavier has been phenomenal. He has all of the content. He still is owed something from me. I've got to give him updates for weeks 12 through 16. Yeah.
Got 20 seconds, you better hurry, Xavier.
But he has everything from me up to week 12. And so he's been working on that. I believe it's pretty much done, with the exception of those who are teaching an enhanced course. If you're teaching an enhanced course, I saw in my email right before I came to the training that all of that content has now been built. But that doesn't mean it's been built into Blackboard yet. And so there will be a slight delay. We'll get that to you as soon as possible. The goal is, if I get it to you tomorrow, first thing, how long will it take you to incorporate the e-stuff?
Probably next week, probably mid next week.
So it may be midweek next week if you're teaching an E before everything is there, the reading part. But you can see all the PowerPoint information ahead of time as well. So I apologize. We've had some transition issues throughout the summer. It won't be like this next year, but I know if you've talked for a while, we've always heard that, but next year we hope that it'll be a little smoother for you. So,
Are you going to show the rosters, how to get the rosters? Okay, so the first thing Xavier's going to do is he's going to log into his My Morehead State, and he's going to click on the self-service button. So when you do that, you're going to look for the faculty tab. If you don't have the faculty tab, I need you to send me an email, s.larson, because we've got to do something on the back end for you that's not done yet. So he's going to log in and authenticate. And do it in 20 seconds, and it's going to be awesome.
again.
So you log into your My Morehead State, and then you authenticate. Has anybody gotten any spam emails since we started authenticating? Yes?
Yes.
Oh, I was hoping they would go away.
It's zoomed out, Xavier, so that's why it may look a little odd, but you can still see it.
I mean, I think it helps position though, emails are just great.
You know,
I
it's
know, $500
enticing,
a
isn't
week.
it?
Yeah, sign me up.
Yeah, so you're gonna click on self-service right here, and then you log in again because it's the most secure system in the whole world. And then you go to the faculty tab. So if you have the faculty tab, you can see your rosters. And then you look at your fall term, you click on the roster, and you scroll down, and it should have a photo roster for you.
Want to talk about the census since we're here?
Yes, we can. So it'll load your photo roster, and it's got all their email addresses on here, and I think there's a button you can pull it down and email all right there, or you can export it into an Excel spreadsheet.
The exporting into Excel spreadsheet allows you to print the entire table, including the pictures, which is very handy.
Yep. If you'll scroll back up to the top. So the way financial aid works here, and I don't work in financial aid, so back me up here. If you don't show up to classes and we give you a refund check, we're gonna be in trouble with the federal government, okay? So we can't do that. So we do what's called a census date, and so you just go log into the census tab, and if you've seen this kid ever, you click the box. Okay, so you're verifying that they're a human being and they're here, and then we just have to have those boxes checked, so when we send them their refund check, we know that they're really here. So, but to give money to people who aren't here is against the law, and we don't want to do that. So that's what the census is. The provost will send a email out. It'll have the directions in it. It'll tell you the deadline for doing it. If they don't attend any of their classes, potentially they could get dropped. So if they're contacting you and you've never seen them before, because Michelle had a kid who said, oh, I was there, and Michelle said, no, there's only 15 people in the class.
13.
So that's what the census date is. So you'll get an email prompt from the provost to do that.
And here's the other reminder too, not that it, it's a big deal, nobody's gonna come down on you too harshly, but whenever the attendance is not compliant, then it goes to Dr. Couch, for example.
Yes.
She gets this list of people who haven't done it, that type of thing. So don't be on that list. I'm sure Dr. Miller's familiar with that list. Don't be on that list.
This is also where you'll do your midterm and final grading.
Yeah, and you'll get, it's not available, so it's just like the retention of the faculty experience. It's all date driven, so it doesn't pop up till the first day of school. So if you go in and look at it, you can't see it right now, but your
Exactly.
rosters are available.
Also the same with attendance. Again, this is where if you decide, and I recommend that you do, take attendance every day, because, and then once it'll show like the dates and everything when it actually launches.
It's because I'm on the online class, so there is no meeting.
Oh, that's right.
But even if you have an in-person class, you can't see the attendance roster right now.
Until it starts.
Date driven, and it's not there until the first day of class.